Mikhail Gorbachev was the head of the Soviet Union Communist Party from 1985 to 1991. He was also the first president elected by the people in 1990. Mikhail Gorbachev played a big role in loosening the hold of the communists in both the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. His dreams of democracy and changes opened the door for the end of the Cold War and the fall of the Berlin Wall. He was taken out from the post of president in 1991, when a coup attempt failed. After leaving the post, Gorbachev worked really hard to promote fairness in society and care for the environment through his own group, the Green Cross. In October 1990, Mikhail Gorbachev was honored with the Nobel Peace Prize for his significant efforts towards promoting worldwide peace. Gorbachev was born in March 1931 in Stavropol, a place in the North Caucasus. His family was poor and worked as farmers. When he was 11 years old, the area was taken over by the Germans for 3 years, and it was a difficult time for everyone in the village. In 1950, he started studying at Moscow University and became a member of the Soviet Union Communist Party. During his time there, he met Raisa Maxima, who would later become his wife, and they got married soon after meeting each other. After completing his law degree, Gorbachev made significant progress in the Communist Party. He became known for his hard work, honesty, and strong loyalty to the communist cause. Unlike his colleagues, he didn't drink much and wasn't interested in personal financial gains. His energy led to some impressive achievements and earned him the respect of party leaders. However, he also realized the limitations of the communist system and how changing the huge bureaucracy was really tough. Gorbachev believed in socialism but wanted to make it more effective and focused on improving people's lives. In 1980, he became the youngest member of the Politburo, a significant achievement that hinted at his future role. Then, in 1985, he was elected as the General Secretary of the Communist Party. This was quite a contrast to the older leaders who had held these positions before him. Gorbachev's youthfulness brought a breath of fresh air. The KGB, the intelligence agency, was happy about his election as they believed he could bring positive changes to the Soviet Union. However, they didn't anticipate just how much Gorbachev would transform communism and the Soviet Union itself. Later on, some KGB sources admitted that considering Gorbachev was their biggest misjudgment. When Gorbachev took charge of the Soviet Union, he introduced two important policies, Perestroika and Glasnost. Perestroika was all about changing the economy and letting market forces have a say. It brought significant changes to how things work, making the economy more flexible. Glasnost was like a fresh breeze in politics. It meant people could express their religious beliefs and enjoy more personal freedoms. This paved the way for democracy and the release of many who had been held as political prisoners. It had a big impact, especially in Eastern European countries. When these countries asked for democracy, the Soviet Union didn't stand in their way anymore, as they had done before in places like Hungary and Czechoslovakia. Just a year after taking charge, a huge explosion happened at the Chernobyl nuclear power station. This brought to light many problems and attempts to hide serious safety issues. This incident strongly reinforced Gorbachev's belief that the communist system urgently needed significant changes. He formed strong bonds with leaders like Ronald Reagan from the US and Margaret Thatcher from the UK. What surprised everyone was his willingness to give up a lot for getting rid of nuclear weapons. Many believe he played a big role in ending the Cold War, not just in the East but also in the West. When he received the Nobel Prize in June 1991, he talked about countries working together to make the world a better place. It was a hopeful message of cooperation. In 1991, there was a serious attempt by conservative military forces to overthrow Gorbachev and save the Soviet Union and the communist system. Gorbachev's life was in real danger during this time. The coup eventually failed, but when Gorbachev returned to Moscow, things had changed. Power had shifted away from the Politburo to more modern-minded leaders like Yeltsin. Gorbachev decided to resign in the midst of all these changes. Unfortunately, he never managed to make a successful comeback to Russian politics after that. Sadly, Gorbachev's wife, Raisa Maximova, passed away due to leukemia in 1999. They had a daughter named Irina. Even though he's not very popular in Russia due to people thinking he played a part in the Soviet Union's breakup, Gorbachev still holds sway as an influential figure. He used to support Putin, but in 2011, he criticized Putin's third term as president. He also spoke out against the lack of fairness in the 2011 elections. Gorbachev's warnings are important. He's concerned that in Russia, the way politics works is becoming more like a fake version of democracy. He points out that most of the power seems to be held by the executive branch of the government. Gorbachev has also given a heads up about a possible new Cold War. He suggests that the US and the West should be careful when getting involved in Russian matters and areas of influence that belong to Russia. When it comes to money matters, he says we should look at things differently. He points out that the big financial crash in 2007 showed that the usual way of thinking about free market economics, known as the Washington Consensus, has its limits. Gorbachev has done more than that too. He started Green Cross International, which is one of the main supporters of the Earth Charter project. This movement aims to make people care more about our planet and the environment around us. It shows how much Gorbachev cares about making the world more sustainable. Gorbachev has officially said that he doesn't believe in any religion. But at the same time, he's been open to the ideas of different religions. He has liked the way St. Francis of Assisi and Pope John Paul II lived. He also had a friendship with an Indian spiritual teacher named Sri Chinmoy. When Gorbachev took charge in 1985, the world was on edge due to the possibility of a nuclear war. The Soviet Union and the US were in a serious conflict, and the way their leaders talked made it clear how much they disagreed. In the Soviet Union, the Communist Party had a tight grip on the country since the big revolution in 1917. Back in 1985, it seemed like there was no chance for anyone to challenge or change the huge power of the Communist Party. But then came Gorbachev, who believed in socialism, yet also cared about the truth. He had learned a lot from his own experiences working in the communist system, and he knew that the Soviet Union had its own limitations. This mix of his strong beliefs and practical understanding set the stage for big changes that reshaped the country and its role in the world. After the tragic Chernobyl disaster in 1985, Gorbachev got really serious about changing communism. His ideas of Glasnost and Perestroika were really revolutionary. Glasnost meant being more open and giving people more freedom. Gorbachev wanted to release political prisoners and let the media be freer. He also started making the country's economy more like a market. The changes Gorbachev started soon gathered speed, and countries in Eastern Europe that were connected to the Soviet Union started feeling what freedom was like. Before, when Eastern European countries like Hungary in 1956 and Czechoslovakia in 1967 tried to break free, the Soviet Union used tanks and force to stop them. But this time, in the late 1980s, as borders started to disappear, Gorbachev chose not to use force against his own people. Some say the strength of Soviet communist power became weaker. That's because Gorbachev was a different kind of leader who moved the country towards freedom. When it came to dealing with other countries, Gorbachev surprised the Western world by passionately pushing for nuclear disarmament and putting an end to the race for weapons, even when there were disagreements with President Reagan. In the early 1980s, Reagan called the Soviet Union the evil empire, but after a while, he saw that Gorbachev was different. The Prime Minister of the UK, Mrs. Thatcher, became famous for saying, "This is a man with whom we can do business." This shows how Gorbachev changed people's views and made them see him as a leader who could work with others globally. The end of communism, the freedom that came to Eastern Europe, and the Cold War's finish might seem obvious now, but looking back, it depended a lot on the choices made by important leaders. Not all leaders would have been okay with giving up their power, allowing the media to be free, and making the economy more democratic. It's good to remember that Gorbachev wasn't the only reason the Cold War ended. There were other important people too, like Pope John Paul II, Reagan, Thatcher, Kohl, and regular folks in Eastern Europe who symbolically destroyed the Berlin Wall. Among all these factors, Gorbachev was the most important piece of the puzzle. Without him, communism's tight grip wouldn't have loosened, and the world wouldn't have changed as much in the 20th century. Mikhail Gorbachev was initially happy when President Putin came into power, as it brought stability after a time of trouble. But as time went on, he started criticizing Putin more, especially because Putin wanted to control what people in Russia could say and do. Even though Gorbachev supported the taking over of Crimea in 2014, someone who knew his family well said that he felt really sad about the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. This was a big blow to all the work he had done in his life. After being unwell for a long time, Mikhail Gorbachev passed away on August 31, 2022, when he was 91 years old. He made a big impact on the world, and his memory lives on.